You are about to enjoy a Firearms Radio Network podcast. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-hosts and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Firearms Radio Network and or their employers. Viewer discretion is advised. This is especially true on live shows. If you like what we're doing and would like to help support the show, visit patreon.com/afteractionproject. If you'd like to throw us some free support and appreciation, we would greatly appreciate a 5-star review on iTunes. And then tonight's episode, just like every episode, is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network. Be sure to check out the other great podcasts on the Firearms Radio Network by visiting firearms-related.net. Our other show sponsor this evening is the RangeBuddy.App. If you haven't checked that out, get over to your favorite app store, either Android or iOS, and download the RangeBuddy.App. It's a collection of over 130 shooting drills, all sorted out by the required target type. You can filter them by the different skills that you would like to work. There's an integrated training tracker and leaderboard that's specific to the drill that you just shot. And the only virtual firearms instructor. We think you guys will enjoy it. So give it a download and let us know what you think. Tonight, we are joined by Erick Gelhaus of Cougar Mountain Solutions. And we're going to be talking about the pistol-mounted optics instructor course that he taught and Will, our student, attended. Before we get into that, Erick, introduce yourself to our listeners. Tell us something or what got you into the firearms training industry and why the pistol-mounted optics instructor course. What got you into that?
So, like a lot of people in prior military, both Cold War and War, did a full career in law enforcement, did the things cops do, patrol, investigations, training, spent a lot of time teaching use of force, basically from a supervisor, and ran units that I had worked in. Been teaching at gun sight since 2000. Put my first dot on a pistol in 2010, spent all of 2012 running a dot on duty, kind of as a very early experiment. So early that to make the holsters work, it was EMT shears and a Dremel tool to a safari holster. When I was ready to retire in 2019, I was approached by the CEO at Gunsight to put together a pistol-mounted optics program for Gunsight, based on kind of what we've seen and training we've gone to with other folks. Out of that emerged the optics instructor class, right? People who had been through the program wanted to know kind of how to teach it. Originally, it was law enforcement only. A lot of folks had kind of requested it, wanted to know how they could get something on it. So I had to take a look around to see what the existing standards were. Different organizations training folks outside of government as instructors. So I looked at Tom Given's intermediate instructor certification for that. I think it calls it his advanced instructor. But I looked at that as the threshold because at least time-wise, it was equivalent to the low-end law enforcement instructor standard, right? A 40-hour class that was between class and 40 hours. And that's kind of where everything went from there.
Awesome. That's 2010. I thought red dots just came on the scene like yesterday or last year.
No, not quite.
Yeah, they've been around for quite a while. Will, talk to us a little bit about your background in the firearms world, your experience with firearms, and what took you, what led you to the Cougar Mountain pistol-mounted optics instructor course.
Born and raised in Texas, which involves firearms. Was in the military, carried firearms as a Marine, and then in the early 2000s realized that there was a lot of stuff I didn't know, and there was a lot of things that I assumed I knew, and so I decided I was going to do basically a complete reboot on all that, just start over at ground level. And when I did, I was fortunate enough where I live to have two people like Wayne Dobbs and Daryl Bulkey as my first teachers. And they're also good friends with Erick. And that just kind of took me down the trail. I'm one of those training junkies people that does a lot of classes all the time. And I had seen Erick back on the old Light Fighter days and always valued his opinion and his thoughts. And I heard a lot of people saying the same thing, that this guy is a deep thinker and he's also an excellent teacher. So like he said, I'd taken some shotgun classes from him. Erick is an excellent teacher with a shotgun as well. but this opportunity came up for the pistol mounted optics instructor. And so at that point, I was like, this is a great idea. And I really, really want to take this. I've been through Tom Gibbons' program. I'm not in any way, shape, form, or fashion law enforcement. But I've been through Tom Gibbons' instructor program and assist him periodically as an AI, which is an honor, by the way, to help out Tom Gibbons on a range. You learn an enormous amount. So the pistol mounted optics program came up and I was like, this is a great opportunity and I wanted to take it.
That's awesome, man. Before we get into this a little bit further, I think we're still having a little bit of choppiness with the audio. Eric, are you there, buddy?
Yes, sir, I am.
Do you see an option to stop the camera on yours?
Yes. I see a camera.
Would you click that and see if that... Let's do another quick little mic check before we get into it. I don't want to miss out on any of the great stuff that we're going to have.
Test. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2.
Yeah, I think that's coming through. I think that's coming through a little bit better. We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
It might be on my end as well. I was having some lag on my end when I was trying to share it in a couple of the different other Facebook groups. So
let's do a little bit longer test. So since Eric is he's a Cougar Mountain Solutions, I have a question for you, Eric. How old does one have to be to become a Cougar?
Well, preferably old enough to legally buy a firearm for the purpose of this class. So the funny thing is, if you're a NASCAR fan, you've ever watched the NASCAR race at Sears Point in California, the mountain on the south side of the track is Cougar Mountain.
Oh wow! Yeah, I watch NASCAR when I can.
Yeah, and I spent some time walking there. I had a thing go on many years ago. And I spent a bunch of time walking up and down the ridge line on that place, and that was kind of where the name came from.
That answers it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, so Will was talking about he's a training junkie. He's taken several other courses, notably the Tom Gibbons. He's gone through the Tom Gibbons instructor program. Eric, talk to us a little bit about your I guess kind of your perspective when you were putting together this instructor level course. What were some of the things that you wanted your students who were going to go teach others? What were some of those things that you wanted them to really walk away from your class with a solid understanding of?
The options. So not just a single way of doing something, but how to teach it. How can you present options to a student? How can you communicate with them? Okay, we showed you A, isn't working well for you. Here is B, right? And understanding that you may have to go A, B, and C to reach a student to find something that works for them. Kind of a series of a way, not the way, but not only how to do it, but also how to teach that, how to put together a program at an agency level that's defensible and works on teaching the student to use optic. I'm going to use the word operationally, but I don't mean it like an operator. I mean it like going out as a working street cop, or for decent, normal human beings to be able to go about carrying it in their life, right? How do they carry it concealed? How do they use it? How does it work best in their setting?
Perfect. So you mentioned agency, and then you also talked about how you want them to be able to operate, but not in the sense of like the cool tactical guy that's ever played. Who is this course designed for? Is it for law enforcement instructors primarily?
It was originally put together as a law enforcement agency instructor training program. Right at the time, I ran the first pistol-mounted optics class down at Gunsight. John Chapman used to be with LMS Defense. Now John's with Forge Tactical. John reached out to me and said that we really needed a optics instructor class that was geared for law enforcement. Shortly after that, New England State Police Agency, who had come through the user class down here at Gunsight, they wanted optics instructor class. So it was put there initially to teach law enforcement, but I kept getting requests from, like I said, normally human beings to do it. So it just took some time for me to kind of settle on what the minimum requirement was going to be for them to come to the class. And then we had a facility that wasn't limited to law enforcement. Fortunately, Dallas down in Carrollton, Texas, phenomenal city, was willing to host the class. The local police department down there put themselves out by getting the Texas version of post-certified. So it was certified for law enforcement, as well as being available to citizens, so we could have everybody participate.
Nice. That makes sense. So it originally set out for law enforcement, and you kind of made the decision after a bunch of non-LE folks were wanting to take that class and saw the need for it. I want to kick it over to Will. Will, what talk to us a little bit about the students, about your perspective in that first part of that class. What did it look like on the range for you guys?
That's a great question. And that was one of the things that I really, really liked about Erick's class. Like I mentioned, I do a bunch of classes, and there are not an enormous number of classes that really teach you how to teach. Adult learning theory. This is how people pick things up. This is how you present data. Erick hit the nail on the head when he said, a lot of times you need multiple methods to reach a particular person. So that was one of the things that right away I thought was excellent about this class. In a way, it was kind of a symposium, a collegium, where it was like you have the Socratic method, and it's like, okay, so if this is a problem, how do you address this problem? How do you teach people this? And there was a lot of how do you create policy and how do you take policy up an organization? But there was also a great deal of material that I took a ton of notes in this class, but there was also a great deal of material on how you teach things. This wasn't a class of, okay, at the beep, I want 2 rounds center of mass, then I want, a head box shot in 0.004 second splits, and all that stuff. It absolutely wasn't that. It was, hey, if a shooter loses a dot, how do you teach them to effectively and quickly regain the dot? Learned a great new method for that. So that was something that I really liked. And having the mixture, we had a mixture of law enforcement. We had a mixture of like Erick calls them, decent, normal human beings on the range. And that was really, really useful, because a lot of the people who were there who were not law enforcement trainers brought a significant amount of experience with other trainers who were well known in the red dot world. So it was really, very honestly, it was very different from a lot of other classes I've had, because it was really kind of like a learning symposium, and we felt like we were building all the instructional plan together. So everybody walked out with a lot of really good tools instead of just, okay, regurgitate this slide deck.
And I love hearing that, because that's what. Well, I can't say that I've taken an instructor level course where that's been the case, where it's just been. Well, no, aside from my NRA basic stuff, where that's kind of what it is. They teach you how to teach. They teach you how to read their words off of the PowerPoint.
Right.
So that's it's reassuring that this was on the opposite end of the spectrum for that.
Very much.
Erick, talk to us a little bit about the requirements for the class. Is there a minimum skill set or level of experience that a student needs to have before signing up and taking this course?
Regardless of whether they're coming from the quote civilian side, that's why I use the decent normal human beings. I go into that road with it, right? The civilian word sometimes tease people up, but the non-uniformed, non-government service perspective of it, or whether they're coming from the LE world, wanted them to have some background with the dot. Right? They were used to shooting it. They had trained with it. They had shot it. They understood how to use it. What I also wanted on it was they had to come through an instructor program, so either a state or a nationally recognized law enforcement instructor program, if they were on the government side of things. And that's why I chose ultimately Tom's advanced instructor program as the threshold, because that would give them a second class in. I was more concerned about making sure we had folks who could teach or who understood at least initial instructor level skills. rather than where they were with the optic, because we were going to shoot the optic over the live fire part of the class and get their skill up. But I also wanted to make sure they could understand how to teach it, and for the law enforcement that they were capable of integrating it into an agency. So that's why I looked at the two levels I did there. And then we spent the first night in the classroom. We spent 3 hours in the classroom just going over all the lecture material, so that when we got onto the range Saturday and Sunday, we were going to be out on the range, not bouncing back and forth.
Eric, when you have a course like this with law enforcement and civilians built in, do you kind of share a little bit of both sides of it when you teach, as far as like, hey, for you civilians, for you law enforcement, or does it really matter at all?
There's times I got to kind of take a left turn for the cops and, hey, agency policy, right? These concerns. There's other times where we're hitting on things specifically for citizens. Just working the differences between constant concealed carry and carrying openly in a duty holster, right? The normal folks aren't going to have to worry about carrying in a duty holster and the things that go with that. And it lets them look at their optics, look at their firearms a different way. Cops are carrying a larger firearm in an open holster with an optic that's going to be exposed to everything from Cheetos to pouring rain and snow. So we have to talk about some of those things a little bit differently. I do, veer off to talk policy concerns for agencies. How do you deal with like mounting, maintenance, and everything else, not just for you and the couple guns you have, but for 20, 30, 300 people. But I also pistol solutions, optics, and how do we deal with those? What might see with different things there that cops wouldn't see?
Hey Eric, it's sounding like my audio isn't what it should be. I want to let me write this timestamp down. That way, if we, I definitely don't want to do a disservice. I think this course is something that deserves the full deal, right? And we're just having some audio issues, and I think it will take away from the content that we're wanting to get out there. We're good to continue on if you are. I just don't want it to. I'm hoping that in post I can pull the local recordings down, and that'll solve any audio issues that we have tonight. But I'm not 100% sure if that's going to be the case.
Okay.
So if it's all the same to you guys, I would like to try this again.
Yeah.
And I know that in your email, and I feel terrible because in your email, you're like, hey, I'm probably going to have some audio stuff. I'm on the road, I'm traveling. And I was like, oh no, it'll be fine. And I hate that I've taken up this part of your evening and that we might have to reschedule it. I feel like a complete jerk. But I don't want any of our listeners to miss out on any of the knowledge that you're sharing with us.
Okay. You guys know what you need quality wise. I'll defer to you.
Yeah, we probably should have. The connection was great when you're on the computer. We just had that echo deal, like you told me, which I should have listened to and be like, no, let's just schedule this for when you're back home. We're good with giving it the rest of the time. I just don't want it. I don't want it to be a waste of time. I don't want it to finish the episode, download it, and then the audio not come through in post either. And then
so. Will, if you can we maybe reschedule for 2 weeks out? That way I'll have headsets that I know I'll be on a more stable connection than I'm on now.
Yeah, let me end this stream real quick.